Colossal Cave Adventure is one of my earliest and fondest gaming memories. We had a Tandy 1000 HX computer in our household that was given to us by my grandparents. By late 80s gaming standards, this computer wasn't at all powerful. Heck, the one we had wouldn't even run Space Quest 3 because it didn't have a high-density disk drive. But it ran the personal deskmate operating system and was fun for 10-year-old me to just mess around with. Getting myself familiar with using a computer, I'd fritter away hours just futzing around in the personal deskmate system. It had this really cool drawing program that was fun to play around with. Or I'd just mess around typing in commands in DOS using the oversized manual that came with it, just to see what would happen. My cousin had a similar Tandy computer, and his dad had given me some extra 3.5-inch discs that he had lying around. One of them had the word Venture scrawled in ink across the label. Wondering what the heck that could be, I popped the disc in, and sure enough, a quick check in DOS revealed a file called advent.exe. So I ran the thing and was greeted with the following message: "Welcome to Adventure. Would you like instructions?" So I typed in yes and was hit with this: "Somewhere nearby is Colossal Cave, where others have found fortunes and treasure and gold, though it is rumored that some who enter are never seen again. Magic is said to work in the cave. I will be your eyes and hands. Direct me with commands of 1 or 2 words," and so on and so forth. What? Then the text reads, "You are standing at the end of a road before a small brick building. Around you is a forest. A small stream flows out of the building and down a gully." All of this was followed by a blinking cursor just waiting on me to type something in. So you enter the building and there's stuff on the ground, so you take it. And from here there's a couple different ways to actually get into the caves. If you've never played the game before, you'll head back outside and eventually find your way downstream to a locked grate. You have to use the keys that you found in the building to get down through the grate, and you'll make your way through some passages that eventually lead to the caves. So the goal here is to navigate your way through the game using basic commands like look or take, and you can move around by using directions such as north, south, up, or down. You get points for finding treasures in the game and safely returning them to the building and dropping them there. There's all sorts of treasures: diamonds, a giant pearl, an emerald, golden eggs, rare coins, you name it. Find the treasures and get them back to the building safely for max points, but there are random encounters that could pop up too. For example, evil dwarves might show up and start hucking axes at you. You might find a troll or a giant bear. At one point, a pirate may even show up and steal all your treasure, which you'll then have to hunt down in the pirate's maze. That's another thing, there's several mazes in the game, and even without the mazes, it's possible to get lost. The overall map, even for the original 350-point version, is pretty massive, and it was best to just make a map as you go along. There are a few different mazes within the caves. You are in a maze of twisty little passages, all alike. Yeah, that phrase has frustrated the hell out of many a gamer in the 40+ years of this game's existence. The solution here is to drop random items that you're carrying so that you can tell all of the passages apart, but who knows? When I was a kid, usually getting stuck in the maze meant the game was over because they also put in something of a time limit. Once you get into the caves, you need a lamp so that you can see where you're going. But the lamp takes batteries. Every time you do anything in-game, a turn gets used. After a certain amount of turns, the batteries will start to go out, and then you'll have to find a vending machine which sells batteries, but the vending machine is in the maze and you'll have to find it before the batteries run out in the lamp. However, you won't be able to get the maximum amount of points if you end up having to buy batteries because you have to spend the rare coins, one of your treasures, in order to get them. The solutions to the puzzles aren't always cut and dry either. Sometimes they're super easy. Like, would you guess that if you find the dragon, the solution is to just type "kill dragon"? No, really. The game asks you, what, with your bare hands? Yes. And it worked. That was one of those where I couldn't believe it actually worked. But then other times you might have to use some basic problem solving. For example, one item you're carrying may scare the little songbird that you have to catch, so you might have to drop a specific item in a different room in order to pick it up. Or if you find the Ming vase, you may not be able to just set it down on the ground in the building. You may need to find something soft to set it on. Since it's a precious vase, you don't want it to shatter now, do you? At one point you find a plant that keeps muttering something about water. Maybe something cool will happen if you water it? Who knows? This all may seem pretty basic and dull by today's standards, but I feel like it's important to turn the clock back and look at this through the lens of a little kid in the late 80s, which is when I discovered it. So at the time, I had been playing mostly Atari games and then steadily moved into NES games. I didn't have a ton of games at that point, but by then I would have been playing Mario, Metroid, stuff like that. Then, out of nowhere, I discovered this text adventure game on my computer. Now, at a glance, that might seem like a step backwards from games that actually, have graphics. But here's the thing. I used to read these choose-your-own-adventure books all the time. My favorite one was Target Earth. The way these worked is you'd read a page or two, and then at the bottom of the page, there'd be a couple of options to choose from, dictating what your character in the book would do next. So, playing a text adventure on computer just felt like a natural progression for me from the choose-your-own-adventure books that I'd been reading. I have so many fond memories playing this game, although I never actually got to the end as a kid. I swear once I saw part of the ending text, one time the game glitched out or something. Maybe I'd taken the disc out while it was still trying to read or something. Some big long drawn out text about being carried off into the sunset by a bunch of friendly dwarves. Again, I realize this would seem totally boring now, but at the time this was just awesome. It really required you to use your imagination, and also the text descriptions were incredibly vivid. There was some really cool stuff in here. At one point you get to this big fissure and there's a shadowy figure on the other side of it that appears to be getting your attention. As a kid, that always fascinated me, and I always wondered if it was supposed to be the pirate or what. Really, it was just a red herring. There's a giant mirror in the canyon, and it's actually just your reflection. But it took forever for that to finally dawn on me as a kid. There's other stuff too. At one point you wander into this hall with warm walls, and it turns out to be this giant super descriptive text about the edge of an underground volcano. There's not even any treasures in this area. It was just a cool thing to stumble across. Colossal Cave Adventure was initially programmed by Will Crowder in the mid-70s for the PDP-10 mainframe computer using Fortran. After the game's initial version was completed in 1977, it was further expanded upon with help from Don Woods. Woods found the game's file on an old SAIL computer and contacted Crowder to see if they could flesh it out a bit and distribute it. Crowder agreed, and various ports and iterations appeared on, well, just about anything and everything. The game's source code was freely available, so anyone could take it and port it to whatever. The original version was 350 points, although future expansions added more treasures for extra points and even more areas of exploration. Trying to track down the original version now is sort of like trying to track down the original version of the books of the Bible. There's dozens upon dozens of iterations floating around out there. It turns out that Will Crowder, the game's designer, was not only a computer programmer, but he was also an avid caver and rock climber, and that ended up being his inspiration for the Colossal Cave Adventure. The game's cave design was based loosely on the Mammoth Cave system in Kentucky, and several of the areas that you find in the game actually have real-life counterparts in the Mammoth Caves. I never knew that as a kid. Crowder also enjoyed Dungeons & Dragons, which was a new thing at the time, and that certainly influenced some of the game's features as well, such as dragons, evil dwarves, and magic wands. Colossal Cave Adventure gave birth to one of the most well-known magic words of all time, a nonsensical ordering of consonant letters known as XYZZY. The player would use the magic word in a certain area in the cave to quickly return to the building to drop off his or her treasures accordingly. The game also had a bit of a sense of humor. It was possible to die in the game, and you'd get a couple of chances to continue depending upon the situation. But if you were out of continues, the game would say, "Now you've really done it. I'm all out of orange smoke. You don't expect me to do a decent reincarnation without any orange smoke now, do you?" Of course, you'd have to type yes, and then the game would say, "Okay, if you're so smart, do it yourself. I'm leaving." And then you're just done. So yeah, Colossal Cave Adventure. Man, I'll always have fond memories of playing this game on my old Tandy. There was another similar text adventure that I ended up playing around that time too, called Moon Mist, where you were in this old mansion with all these people trying to solve a murder mystery, and there was some spooky ghost elements involved. That one was a lot of fun too. And of course, playing Colossal Cave did eventually lead into playing Space Quest 3 at my cousin's house. Yeah, I'm pretty sure getting to play a text adventure with actual graphics made my head totally explode, and that experience of progressing from simple text adventures to graphical text adventures is probably why I love the Space Quest games so much. And that also laid the foundation for my enjoyment of the McVenture series of games that were eventually released on the NES. Colossal Cave also inspired other similar text adventure titles such as the Zork series as well as Scott Adams' Adventureland. So yeah, Colossal Cave Adventure. I'd love to hear about your experiences with text adventures. Did you play Colossal Cave or any of the Zork games as a kid growing up? And if so, which computer outfit did you play on? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.